I didn't tell anyone where I was going that morning. I just grabbed a duffel bag, threw in a couple of shirts, my toothbrush, and the bottle I'd been pretending I didn't need. And I got in the car before the sun had fully come up. The house was still quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful anymore, just hollow. I remember standing in the kitchen for a second before I left, staring at the coffee maker like I was supposed to do something with it, like making coffee would somehow make me stay. But I didn't stay. I drove north without really thinking about it. I just followed the highway until the city started thinning out, until the traffic lights turned into long stretches of nothing and the buildings gave way to trees. There's a lake about 2 hours out, one of those places people go in the summer with their kids and coolers and loud music. But in early spring, it's empty, cold, quiet in a way that actually feels like something. I'd been there once before, years ago, when my son was little, back when everything still felt possible, I guess. I didn't plan on coming back here. It just happened. The road leading to the lake was cracked and narrow, the kind of road where your tires hum differently. I remember rolling the windows down even though it was still cold out, just to feel something sharp on my skin. The air smelled like wet dirt and pine, clean in a way I didn't deserve. I parked near the far end of the lot, away from the main dock. There were only 2 other cars there, both empty. I didn't look too closely. I didn't want to risk someone recognizing me, even though that didn't make much sense. Nobody out there knew me. That was the point. I grabbed my bag and walked down to the water. The lake was gray, flat, stretching out like it didn't care about anything happening on shore. There was still a thin line of ice near the edges, breaking apart slowly. I stood there for a long time, just watching it shift and crack. I kept thinking about the last thing my wife said to me. You don't get to disappear when it gets hard. That was the problem, though. It had already gotten hard. It had been hard for a long time. And I hadn't just disappeared. Not really. I'd been gone long before I got in the car that morning. Her name is Rachel. We've been married 12 years. We have 1 kid, Mason. He's 10. Smart. Too observant for his own good. The kind of kid who notices when your smile doesn't reach your eyes, even if you think you're hiding it. I used to be better at hiding things. That's what this whole mess comes down to, I guess. Not just what I did, but how long I thought I could carry it without it spilling over. Her name was Claire. I met her at work about 8 months ago. New hire, marketing department. She had this way of talking that made everything feel like a joke, like nothing really mattered. At first, it was just small conversations, coffee in the break room, complaints about deadlines, the kind of harmless stuff you don't even think twice about. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself a lot of things. It started shifting the night we stayed late for a project. Everyone else had left. It was just the 2 of us in the office, sitting across from each other, laptops open, pretending we were still focused. I remember looking up and catching her watching me, not in a casual way, in a way that made my chest tighten a little. You ever feel like you picked the wrong life? She asked. It came out of nowhere. I laughed it off at first, said something like, that's a heavy question for a Tuesday night. But she didn't laugh. She just kept looking at me, like she already knew the answer. And the truth is, I did feel that way sometimes. Not all the time. Not enough to leave. But enough that when someone else said it out loud, it felt like a door opening. That's how it always starts, I think. Not with some big, dramatic decision. Just a small crack in something you thought was solid. After that, we started texting. At first, it was still about work. Then it wasn't. Late-night messages. Jokes that crossed a line we both pretended not to see. I knew exactly what I was doing, even when I told myself I didn't. The first time we touched, it was accidental. Or at least, that's what we told ourselves. We were walking out to the parking lot, and she tripped slightly on the curb. I reached out, grabbed her arm to steady her. My hand stayed there a second too long. She didn't pull away. That moment stuck with me all night. I went home, sat on the couch next to Rachel, watched TV like nothing had happened, when my mind kept replaying that brief contact over and over. I should have stopped then. I didn't. A week later, we had drinks after work. Just 1, we said. That turned into 3. Then we were in her car, parked in the far corner of the lot, and it wasn't accidental anymore. I remember the exact second I crossed that line, the way my brain tried to split in 2, one part of me fully aware of what I was doing, the other desperately trying to justify it. It's just this once. That's the lie everyone tells. It wasn't just once. It turned into something regular. Not every day, not even every week, but enough that it became part of my life, a separate life, one that existed alongside my real one, without ever fully touching it. Or at least, that's what I thought. At home, things with Rachel started to feel strained. Not in a dramatic, screaming fights kind of way. It was quieter than that, more subtle. She'd ask me how my day was, and I'd give short answers. She'd reach for my hand, and I'd hesitate just long enough for her to notice. Mason started picking up on it too. He'd ask why I was always on my phone, why I had to work late so much. Kids don't need proof. They just feel it. The night everything came apart wasn't even that dramatic. No big reveal.
No catching me in the act. I just got careless. I left my phone on the kitchen counter while I went to take a shower. I didn't think twice about it. Rachel had never gone through my phone before. We had that kind of trust. Or we used to. When I came back out, she was sitting at the table, my phone in her hand. She didn't yell. That would have been easier. She just looked at me, eyes steady, like she was trying to memorize my face. How long, she asked. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. That silence told her everything. Mason was upstairs. I remember thinking that, even in that moment, that he was just one floor above us, probably playing video games, completely unaware that his family was breaking apart underneath him. Rachel stood up slowly. You don't get to lie to me anymore, she said. Not even by staying quiet. So I told her. Not everything. Not the full truth. But enough. Enough to hurt her in a way I don't think I fully understood until I fought on her face. She didn't cry right away. That came later. At first, she just looked. Empty. Like something inside her had shut off completely. Do you love her? She asked. I said no. I don't even know if that was true. That's the worst part. Not knowing what's real anymore. That night I slept on the couch. Or at least I lay there staring at the ceiling while everything replayed in my head. The next morning we barely spoke. Mason noticed. Of course he did. He kept looking between us at breakfast like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Are you guys okay? He asked. Rachel forced a smile. Yeah, honey. Just tired.
I couldn't even look at him. By the time he left for school, the house felt unbearable. Every room held some version of the life I'd just wrecked. Pictures on the walls, his drawings on the fridge, the couch where we used to sit together like everything was fine. Rachel finally broke the silence. You need to leave for a while, she said. Not angrily, just firmly. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't try to fix it. I think part of me knew there wasn't anything I could say that wouldn't make it worse. So I packed a bag, and I left. Which brings me back to the lake. I sat down on a weathered bench near the water and pulled out the bottle. I hadn't even had a drink in months. Not really. I'd been too busy juggling everything else. But now, it felt like the only thing that made sense. I took a long sip, letting it burn all the way down. For a while, I just sat there, watching the water, trying not to think. But thinking is all you can do in a place like that. I thought about Rachel, about the look on her face, about Mason, and the way he'd asked if we were okay. I told myself I just needed space, time to figure things out. That's what I kept repeating. Space, time, distance. Like those words could clean up what I'd done. I don't know how long I'd been sitting there when I heard footsteps behind me. At first, I didn't turn around. I figured it was one of the other people from the parking lot, someone walking by. But then I heard a voice. Dad. Everything in my body went still. I turned slowly, and there he was. Mason, standing a few feet behind me, wearing his hoodie, his sneakers muddy like he'd been walking for a while. His face looked different somehow. Not scared, not even angry, just certain, like he knew exactly what he was seeing. And in that moment, I realized something that hit harder than anything Rachel had said. I hadn't just left my wife. I tried to disappear from my son, and he had found me anyway. For a second, I honestly thought I was imagining him, like my brain had finally cracked under the pressure and decided to throw guilt at me in the form of my own kid. But he didn't disappear. He just stood there, breathing a little hard, like he'd rushed to get to me. Mason? My voice came out rough, like I hadn't eased it in days. What are you doing here? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, then at the bottle in my hand, then back at me again. That look? It wasn't confusion. It wasn't even disappointment the way you'd expect from a 10-year-old. It was recognition. I followed you, he said finally. The words landed heavier than they should have. A kid saying that shouldn't sound like an accusation, but it did. What do you mean you followed me? I stood up too quickly, the bench scraping behind me. Mason, you're supposed to be at school. I was, he said. I left. That hit me in a completely different way. A sharp, immediate kind of panic. You what? I stepped closer to him. You just walked out of school? He shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal. I saw you leave this morning.
You didn't say goodbye. I stopped. He was right. I hadn't. I thought you were going to work, he continued, but you didn't go that way. So I waited. Then I took my bike. I stared at him, trying to piece together what he was saying. The distance from our house to the lake wasn't small. Even by car, it took a while. On a bike? I couldn't even process it. You biked here? I asked, my voice tightening. Most of the way, he said. Then I got tired and walked. There was dirt on his jeans, a faint scrape on his hand I hadn't noticed before. His hair was messy, like the wind had been hitting him for hours. A wave of something twisted in my chest. Fear, guilt, anger, all of it tangled together. Mason, that was not okay, I said, probably sharper than I meant to. You can't just leave school and come out here by yourself. Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? He flinched, but only slightly. Not like he used to when he got in trouble. This was different. Do you have any idea how dangerous what you're doing is? He shot back. That stopped me cold. We just stood there. The lake behind me, the empty parking lot somewhere up the hill, and this huge, quiet space pressing in around us. Your mom told you? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He shook his head. I heard you, he said. Last night. Of course he did. Of course he was upstairs, hearing every word we thought we were keeping contained. I ran a hand over my face, suddenly feeling exhausted in a way that went way deeper than just not sleeping. Mason? I started, but I didn't even know what I was going to say. He stepped closer. Are you leaving? He asked. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't raise his voice. But there was something underneath it that made it hit harder than anything else. I just needed some time, I said. To think. That's not what I asked. I looked at him. Really looked at him. He wasn't a little kid in that moment. Or at least, he wasn't acting like one. There was this steadiness in his eyes that I wasn't ready for. Are you leaving us? He said again. The truth sat right there in my throat, heavy and complicated, because the answer wasn't simple. I hadn't hacked everything. I hadn't said the word divorce, but I had walked out. I don't know, I admitted, and I hated how weak that sounded. His jaw tightened slightly. He looked away from me, out at the lake, like he was trying to process something bigger than he should have to. She was crying, he said quietly. I swallowed. Your mom? I asked, even though it was obvious. He nodded. I've never seen her like that, he added. That image hit me hard. Rachel, alone in the kitchen, or maybe in our bedroom, finally letting herself break after holding it together in front of me. I messed up, I said, the words feeling inadequate the second they left my mouth. Mason let out a small, humorless breath. Not quite a laugh. Yeah, he said. There was no hesitation in it, no attempt to soften the truth. And weirdly, that hurt more than if he'd yelled at me. I didn't mean for you to find out like this, I said. He looked back at me, eyebrows pulling together. How are we supposed to find out? He asked. Were you just never going to tell us? I didn't have an answer for that, because the truth was I hadn't thought that far ahead. I'd been living moment to moment, lie to lie, convincing myself I was in control of something that had clearly been unraveling for a while. I don't know, I said again, quieter this time. He shook his head, like he was disappointed in more than just my words. You always tell me to think before I do stuff, he said, to not just do something and then deal with it later. I felt that one land deep. I know, I said, but you didn't do that, he continued. You just did it. He wasn't wrong. That was the worst part. We stood there in silence for a few seconds. The wind picked up slightly, rippling the surface of the lake. Somewhere in the distance I heard a bird call, sharp and lonely. I thought you were mad at me, he said suddenly. That caught me off guard. What? I frowned. Why would I be mad at you? He shrugged again, but this time it looked more like he was trying to hide something. I don't know, he said. You've been weird. Not talking as much. Always on your phone. I thought maybe I did something. That hit harder than anything else he'd said so far.
No, I said quickly, stepping closer to him.
"No, Mason, this has nothing to do with you. None of it." He looked at me, searching my face, like he was trying to decide if he believed me. "It doesn't feel like that," he said. I didn't blame him. From his perspective, everything had just shifted. And kids don't look for complicated explanations. They look for the simplest one, themselves. "I'm sorry," I said, and this time it felt more real, not like a reflex, not like something I was supposed to say. I should have been better. I should have been there. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he walked past me and sat down on the bench I had just been on. He looked out at the water, his feet barely touching the ground. I hesitated, then sat down next to him, leaving a little space between us. For a while, neither of us spoke. "Is she better than Mom?" he asked out of nowhere. I felt my stomach drop. "Mason, just answer," he said, still looking straight ahead. There was no good way to answer that, no version of the truth that wouldn't cause damage. "No," I said firmly. "She's not." That, at least, was something I was sure about. "Then why?" he asked. And there it was, the question I'd been avoiding, even in my own head. Why? Why risk everything for something that wasn't even better? "I don't have a good answer," I admitted. "I made a bad decision, and then I kept making it." He nodded slowly, like he was filing that away. "That's stupid," he said. I let out a small breath. "Yeah, it is." We sat there a little longer, the silence not as sharp as before, but still heavy. "You're still my dad, right?" he said after a while. I turned to him immediately. "Of course I am," I said. "That doesn't change, ever." He finally looked at me again, and for the first time since he'd shown up, I saw something softer in his expression. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something less guarded. "Then come home," he said. Just like that. Simple, direct, like it should be an easy decision. I looked back out at the lake, at the gray water stretching out endlessly, offering nothing. I'd come here to escape, to get away from the mess I'd made, but the mess had followed me anyway. Or maybe it had never been something I could leave behind in the first place. "I don't know if your mom wants me there right now," I said carefully. "She wants you to not be like this," he said. "I know that." I let that sink in. He wasn't wrong. Rachel hadn't told me to disappear forever. She told me to leave for a while. There was a difference. I just didn't know what going back meant. Not really. "Mason," I said, turning toward him, "even if I come back, things aren't just going to go back to normal." "I know," he said quickly. "I'm not a baby." I winced slightly at that, but nodded. "It's going to be hard," I continued. "Your mom is hurt, really hurt, and I did that." You looked down at his hands. "Then fix it," he said. There was no sarcasm in it, no attitude, just a kid stating what seemed obvious to him. I wished it were that simple. "I'm going to try," I said. He looked back up at me, studying my face again. "Not try," he said. "Do it." I almost smiled at that, despite everything. It sounded so much like something I'd said to him before. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll do it." Another pause. Then he stood up. "Good," he said, "because I'm tired, and I don't want to walk all the way back." That actually got a small, real laugh out of me. "Yeah," I said, standing up too. "Let's get you home." I picked up my bag, hesitated for just a second, then reached down and grabbed the bottle. I looked at it, felt the weight of it in my hand. Then I twisted the cap open and poured the rest of it out onto the dirt. Mason watched me but didn't say anything. We started walking back toward the parking lot together, side by side, not talking much, not needing to. But with every step, I felt the reality of what was waiting for me back home pressing closer. Rachel, the truth, the damage I'd done, and the fact that this wasn't something I could run from anymore. Not when my son had been willing to chase me down to a quiet, empty lake just to make sure I didn't disappear. The drive back felt longer than the trip out, even though it was the exact same road. Mason fell asleep about 20 minutes in, his head tilted against the window, his hoodie bunched up under his cheek. I kept glancing over at him every few seconds, like I needed to make sure he was still there, like he might disappear the same way I tried to. His bike was crammed awkwardly into the back seat, one wheel still spinning slightly every time I hit a bump. There was dirt all over the floor, a faint smell of sweat and outside air filling the car. It should have annoyed me. Normally, I'd have said something about the mess, but all I could think about was how far he'd gone just to find me. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my eyes drifting back to the road stretching ahead. The closer we got to town, the heavier everything felt. The lake had been quiet, distant, like a pause in reality. But this was real life closing back in. Traffic lights, gas stations, people going about their day like nothing had changed. Meanwhile, my entire life felt like it had split open overnight. Mason stirred as we pulled into our neighborhood. He blinked a few times, disoriented, then straightened up when he realized where we were.
"Are we home?" he asked, his voice still thick with sleep. "Yeah," I said. He nodded like that was all he needed. No hesitation, no second thoughts. I envied that. I parked in the driveway, and for a moment neither of us moved. The house looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Same porch light, same car parked in the street across from us, same curtains in the front window. But it didn't feel the same. Nothing did. Mason unbuckled his seatbelt and grabbed his hoodie. "You coming?" he asked, already halfway out the door. I hesitated, just for a second, then I nodded. "Yeah, I'm coming." We walked up to the front door together. I noticed the small things, the chipped paint near the handle, the way the welcome mat was slightly crooked, things I'd seen 1,000 times but never really paid attention to. Mason opened the door without knocking. "Mom?" he called out as he stepped inside. I followed behind him, my chest tightening with every step. Rachel was in the living room. She stood up the second she saw us, her eyes going straight to Mason. Relief washed over her face so quickly it was almost painful to watch. "Oh my God," she said, rushing over. "Where have you been? Your school called." She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me fully step into the room. The relief didn't disappear, but it hardened around the edges. "Mason," she said, her voice shifting, "go to your room for a minute, okay?" He looked between us, clearly not thrilled about that idea. "I'm fine," he said. "I was with Dad." "I know," she said gently, but there was a firmness underneath it. "Just go upstairs, please." He hesitated, then glanced at me. I gave him a small nod. "It's okay, go on." He didn't look convinced, but he went anyway, dragging his feet slightly as he headed up the stairs. I waited until I heard his bedroom door closed, but turning back to Rachel. The silence between us was immediate and heavy. She crossed her arms, not in a defensive way, but like she was holding herself together. "You took him out of school?" she asked.
No, I said quickly. He followed me, on his bike. Her expression shifted again, something like shock flashing across her face. "He what?" I ran a hand through my hair. "He saw me leave this morning. He thought I was going to work. When I didn't, he followed. He rode most of the way to the lake." Her eyes widened, and for a second, her anger disappeared completely, replaced by something else. Fear. "He could have gotten hurt," she said, her voice dropping. "I know," I said. "I told him that." She turned away from me, pacing a few steps before stopping near the window. "I've been calling you all morning," she said. "Your phone went straight to voicemail." I reached into my pocket, pulling it out. "Dead." "I didn't realize," I muttered. She let out a short, bitter breath. "Of course you didn't." That stung, but I didn't argue. I didn't have the right to. Another silence settled in, thicker this time. "You came back," she said finally, not turning around. It wasn't a question. "Yeah," I said. She nodded slightly, still facing away from me. "Why?" That word again. "Why?" I swallowed, trying to find something honest that didn't sound like an excuse. "Mason found me," I said. He asked me to come home." She closed her eyes for a second, like she was processing that. "And that's the only reason?" she asked. "No," I said, stepping a little closer. "It's not the only reason, but it's the one that made me stop running." She turned to face me then, her eyes locking onto mine. "You think this is running?" she asked. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "It is." I left instead of dealing with what I did. I thought I needed space, but really I was just avoiding it. Her jaw tightened slightly. "You don't get to frame this like some kind of realization," she said. "You didn't just run. You lied. You cheated. For months." "I know," I said, my voice low. "I know what I did." "Do you?" she shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it doesn't feel like you do." I didn't respond right away, because part of me knew she was right. Understanding something in your head isn't the same as really feeling the weight of it. "I'm trying to," I said finally. She let out a hollow laugh. "Trying," she repeated. "That's your favorite word today." I flinched slightly at that, remembering Mason saying almost the same thing. "I ended it," I said. The words hung in the air between us. Rachel's expression didn't change immediately. If anything, she looked more guarded. "When?" she asked. "This morning," I said, "before I left." That part was true. One of the few things I'd done right in the middle of all this. Claire had texted me late last night, asking if I was okay after everything. I didn't respond then, but this morning, before I got in the car, I sent one message. "It's over. Don't contact me again." Simple, final. At least that's what I told myself. Rachel studied my face, like she was trying to find cracks in what I was saying. "And I'm just supposed to believe that?" she asked. "I don't expect you to believe anything right now," I said. "I haven't given you a reason to." She nodded slowly, like she appreciated the honesty but didn't know what to do with it. "Then what do you expect?" she asked. I took a breath, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. "I don't know," I admitted. "I don't expect things to go back to normal. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe at all." Her eyes flickered slightly at that, but she didn't interrupt.
But I want to try to fix this, I continued. Not just say it, actually do it. She held my gaze, searching for something real. And what does that look like? She asked. I don't have all the answers yet, I said, but I know it starts with being here, not leaving when things get hard, being honest, completely honest. She let that sit for a moment. Honest, she repeated. Okay, then be honest with me. I nodded. Did you love her? She asked. The question hit differently this time than it had the night before. Maybe because I wasn't trying to escape anymore. Maybe because Mason's face was still fresh in my mind. I cared about her, I said slowly. But no, not the way I love you. Rachel's expression didn't soften, but something in her eyes shifted. Not forgiveness, not even close, but maybe recognition. Then why wasn't that enough? She asked. I didn't look away this time. Because I got selfish, I said. Because I let myself believe that I was missing something instead of appreciating what I had. And instead of talking to you about it, I went somewhere else. Her eyes glistened slightly, but she blinked it back quickly. You didn't just go somewhere else, she said quietly. You built something with someone else, while I was here, while we were here. I know, I said. And now you're back because you got caught, she added. That one hit hard. I could have argued, could have said it wasn't just that. But again, she wasn't wrong. That's part of it, I admitted, but not all of it. She raised an eyebrow slightly, waiting. I came back because I realized what I was about to lose, I said. Not just you, but him, our family, everything we built. And it took him showing up at a lake for you to realize that? She asked. I swallowed. Yeah, I said. It did. The honesty of that felt brutal, but it was the only thing I had left to offer. Rachel looked at me for a long moment, then finally looked away. I don't know if I can do this, she said softly. I felt that in my chest, sharp and immediate. I understand, I said. And I don't know if I want you here right now, she added. That one hurt more than I expected, even though I'd been preparing for it. But, she continued, before I could respond, I also don't want you disappearing again. Not like that. Not where he feels like he has to go find you. I nodded. I won't, I said. I promise. She didn't react to the promise. Not yet. We need time, she said, and space. But not that kind of space. I get that, I said. Another pause. Then from upstairs, we heard a door creak open slightly. Mason. Listening. Of course he was. Rachel glanced toward the stairs, then back at me. For now, she said, you can stay. But things are not okay, and they're not going to be for a while. I know, I said. And if you're going to be here, she added, then you actually have to be here. Not halfway, not distracted, not hiding things. I will be, I said. She held my gaze for another second, then gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Go talk to him, she said. He's been through enough already. I looked toward the stairs, feeling that weight again. Okay, I said. As I started toward them, I realized something I hadn't fully accepted until that moment. Coming back wasn't the hard part. Staying, and facing everything I'd broken, that was going to be the real test. I stood outside Mason's door for a second before knocking. It felt strange, like I needed permission to walk into my own kid's room. That had never been the case before. I used to just walk in, mess up his hair, ask what he was playing or building or watching. Easy. Normal. Now I was standing there, hesitating. I knocked anyway. Yeah? His voice came from inside, quieter than usual. I pushed the door open slowly. He was sitting on his bed, his back against the wall, a controller in his hands, but the TV paused. He wasn't really playing.
Just holding on to something to keep his hands busy. Hey, I said. Hey, he replied, not looking up right away. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The room looked exactly the same as it always had. Posters on the wall, clothes half folded on the chair, a couple of empty snack wrappers on the desk. But it didn't feel the same. Nothing did anymore. You okay? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He shrugged, eyes still on the screen. I guess. I leaned against the wall for a second, then moved over and sat on the edge of his bed. Not too close, just enough to be there. You weren't supposed to hear all that, I said. He let out a small breath through his nose. I hear a lot of stuff I'm not supposed to. That stung more than I expected. I know, I said, and I'm sorry. He finally looked at me then, his expression somewhere between guarded and tired. You keep saying that, he said. I mean it, I replied. He studied my face for a second, like he was trying to decide if I was telling the truth or just saying what I thought he wanted to hear.
Are you staying? He asked. For now, yeah, I said. Your mom and I are figuring things out. He nodded slowly, like he understood that meant things were still unstable. Are you going to leave again? He asked. The question came out simple, but it hit hard. No, I said firmly. Not like that. I'm not just going to disappear. He held my gaze for a moment, then gave a small nod. Not full trust, but something. Good, he said quietly. There was a pause, the kind that used to feel comfortable but now felt loaded. I didn't like it, he added. I know, I said. I wouldn't have liked it either. He looked down at the controller in his hands, turning it slightly. I thought maybe you didn't want to be here anymore, he said. I felt that one deep. That's not true, I said immediately. I do want to be here. I just made a really bad decision. He frowned a little. Then why did you do it? There it was again. That same question, still just as hard to answer. I exhaled slowly, trying to find words that didn't sound like excuses. Sometimes adults mess things up, even when they know better, I said. It doesn't make it okay. It just happens because we don't deal with things the right way. He didn't look convinced. That still doesn't make sense, he said. Yeah, I admitted. It doesn't, does it? He shook his head slightly. If I did something like that, you'd ground me forever, he added. I almost smiled, but it didn't fully land. You're not wrong, I said. And honestly, if there was a way to ground me for this, I probably deserve it. That got a small reaction out of him. Not quite a smile, but close. We sat there for a minute, the tension easing just a little. Is Mom going to be okay? He asked. I hesitated. She's hurt, I said. Really hurt. But she's strong. He nodded, absorbing that. She was crying a lot, he said quietly, after you left. I closed my eyes for a second, that image hitting me again. I know, I said, and that's on me. He shifted slightly, pulling one knee up onto the bed. Are you going to make her cry again? He asked. That one didn't feel like a kid's question. It felt like something heavier, something protective. No, I said. I'm going to do everything I can not to. He watched me carefully, like he was measuring how much that promise was worth. You better not, he said. I won't, I replied. Another silence settled in, but this one felt different, not as sharp. Your bike's in the car, I said after a moment. We should probably clean it up later. He shrugged. It's fine. You rode pretty far, I added. Yeah, he said. I didn't really think about it. I nodded. That seems to run in the family. That actually made him smile a little. Just a quick one, but it was there. Yeah, he said. I guess. I leaned back slightly, resting my hands on the bed. You scared me, I said, when I realized how far you'd come. He looked at me sideways. You were already gone. That hit harder than anything else he'd said. I didn't have a response for that, because he was right. I had been gone, even before I physically left. I'm here now, I said instead, and I'm not going anywhere. He didn't answer right away, just looked at me, like he was trying to decide if that meant something yet. Okay, he said finally. It wasn't forgiveness, not even close, but it was something. I'm going to go check on your mom, I said, standing up slowly. You need anything? He shook his head. No. I walked to the door, then paused, my hand on the handle. Hey, Mason, I said. Yeah? I'm really glad you came and found me. He looked down for a second, then back up. Yeah, he said. Me too. I nodded, then stepped out and closed the door behind me. The hallway felt quieter than before, heavy but not as chaotic. I walked back downstairs, each step feeling more deliberate than the last. Rachel was in the kitchen this time, leaning against the counter, staring down at her phone. She looked up when she heard me. He okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. He's processing. She nodded slightly, like that matched what she expected. There was a glass of water on the counter in front of her. She hadn't touched it. I talked to him, I added. He's worried about you. Her expression softened just a fraction. I'm worried about him, she said. I know, I replied. Another silence. I told him I'm staying, I said. She looked at me carefully. For now. Yeah, I said. For now. She exhaled slowly, like she was trying to release some of the tension but couldn't quite manage it. This is going to take time, she said. I know. And it's not just about you saying the right things, she added. It's about what you actually do. I understand, I said. She studied my face for a moment, then nodded slightly. Good, she said. I shifted my weight, not sure what to do next. Everything felt unfamiliar, like I was a guest in my own home. I can stay in the guest room, I offered. Give you space. She considered that, then nodded. Yeah, she said. That's probably best. Okay.
Another pause. I meant what I said earlier, I added, about ending it. She didn't react much, just leaned back against the counter. I heard you, she said. I'm serious about fixing this, I continued. I'm not just saying it. She looked at me, her eyes tired but sharp. Then prove it, she said. There wasn't anger in her voice this time, just a quiet challenge. I will, I said. She nodded once, like she was acknowledging the words but not investing in them yet. Dinner's in the fridge, she said, changing the subject slightly. He didn't really eat earlier. I'll heat something up for him, I said. Okay. I moved toward the fridge, then stopped. Rachel, I said. She looked up. I'm sorry, I said again. But this time it felt heavier. Not just a word, but everything behind it. She held my gaze for a long second. I know, she said quietly, but it didn't fix anything. It didn't undo anything. It just existed there, in the middle of everything we'd broken. That night felt longer than any night I could remember, not because anything dramatic happened, but because everything was different in small, constant ways. I heated up dinner for Mason, and we ate at the table together. Rachel joined us, but the conversation was minimal. Normal questions, short answers.
It felt like we were all trying to act like things weren't completely off, but none of us really believed it. Afterward, Mason went back to his room. Rachel cleaned up the kitchen. I offered to help, but she shook her head. I've got it, she said. So I stood there for a second, then backed off. Later, I grabbed my bag from the car and set up in the guest room. It felt strange, sleeping in a different bed in the same house, like I'd been relocated without actually leaving. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the same way I had the night before. But this time, I wasn't alone in a quiet house. I could hear small sounds, a door closing upstairs, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the life of the house continuing around me. And I realized something I hadn't fully accepted before. This wasn't a moment. It wasn't something that would pass quickly. This was going to be a long, slow process, one where every word, every action, every choice mattered, and I had no idea if it would be enough. But for the first time since everything fell apart, I wasn't trying to escape that reality. I was just lying there, in it.